It's Monday, July 15, 2019, and this is Globespan News. My name is Samuel Suknandon, coming to you live from Georgetown, Guyana. Here are the major headlines for today. 5 remanded over murder of money changer and daughter. Western diplomats urge government to abide by CCJ ruling. 63-year-old man gets 20 years jail sentence for raping child 4. General elections could be held this year, political analysts. And international community will be on trial regarding CCJ ruling, says Jantio. Now let's take a look at these stories a bit clearer. 5 men were charged today for the murder of a Better Hope money changer and his daughter, who were brutally gunned down in their home almost 2 weeks ago. Aaron Latchman and his daughter Ariana died on the same day, Thursday, July 4, 2019. Those charged are Sion Thomas, 46, Lloyd Sadulu, 37, Paul Chan, 34, Troy Abrams, 44, and Mark Rafido, 26. They were not required to plead to the indictable charges and were remanded to prison. The men who appeared before the Sparndam Magistrates Court tried to conceal their faces. Family and friends of the deceased were at the court during the hearing. The 5 men were arrested by police during the course of last week. The incident has sent shockwaves throughout the country and garnered much public attention and interest. One of the suspects had confessed to knowledge of and participation in the murder. Sadulu was the last suspect to be arrested. He was previously freed of 2 murder charges. Reports indicate that the suspect allegedly provided 3 men with guns and ammunition, which were used to kill the Latchmans at their Better Hope East Coast Demerara home. The suspected killers allegedly told police that after the murder and robbery was committed, they met at a house in Savaya and divided up the cash they stole, with everyone receiving around $150,000 each. Reports also indicate that the prime suspect has been the mastermind of several of the robberies committed on America Street money changers. In other news, a 63-year-old man was today sentenced to 20 years behind bars by Justice Simone Morris Ramlal at the High Court for raping a 4-year-old girl. Gregory Ramkisoon confessed to the crime which he committed back in January of 2016 and is also facing charges of indecent assault and sexual assault committed on the victim. He was represented by attorney Ravindra Mahabir, while the state was represented by prosecutor Tuana Hardy and Sarah Martin. Ramkisoon's sentence provides the possibility of parole after 15 years. And in the world of politics, Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs Basil Williams says government is satisfied with the recent ruling of the Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ, and noted that the court has responded to most of the submissions made by the government in its consequential orders. Appearing on the program aired on the Department of Public Information, the AG said there cannot be a lapse in government, especially since an issue like the Ghana-Venezuela border controversy is ongoing.
We have to continue governing lest we are overrun by the narco traffickers, those who traffic in persons, of course, because of the porosity of our borders. And the whole question of money laundering and other serious crime. So the government can't, no government, there cannot be a lapse in government when you threaten with such serious transnational crimes.
Minister Williams highlighted that the president is willing to meet with the opposition leader, Barry Jagdeo, to hammer out the issue of finding a GCOM chairman. Williams said when a chairman is nominated and sworn in, the commission will have to advise the president on the way forward so that credible elections can be held.
We still have to flesh out, and we're looking at it, fleshing out the real essence of an interim government, bearing in mind that you retain your full panoply of powers and the need to continue governing to secure the country, in the public interest, the country's public security, the country's border, and the welfare and well-being of the people of the country. So it's only until the next elections are held. And of course, that is an issue that GCOM will have to advise the president on as to its ability when where and how, when, where and how. Elections, credible elections could be held by them with a credible list.
Given the recent decision by the Caribbean Court of Justice, political analyst Dr. David Hines has weighed in, stating that credible elections could be held this year if Ghana's two political figures come to an agreement on the way forward and stick to it. More in this report.
I think if a chairman is put in place this week, I think we can have elections before the end of the year. That is my firm view.
That was political analyst Dr. David Hines. Hines told his newscast in an exclusive interview that an agreement must be met by both President David Granger and opposition leader Barra Jagdeo to sanitize the voters list.
They seem to be stuck on what device to use. One is saying house of registration, the other one is saying claims and objectives. So it seems to me that the issue here is what to do about that list. So once they can agree what to do with the list, my preference is for house registration. But if they agree on another means of sanitizing the list, I think we can have election before the end of the year, and I think that would be reasonable.
The political analyst says, based on the judgment and an agreement by both leaders on the way forward for the voters list, elections could be held in November or December. However, Jagdeo and his party has been clear on their position not to have house-to-house registration and demands that elections be held in September instead. Given his views on the recent CCJ decision, Dr. Hines feels that the court's decision not to give specific instructions meant that it was carrying out its rightful functions.
Because had the court given a coercive order, the court would have then been encroaching on the sphere of the executive, which would have been overreaching, and the court didn't want to do that. The court respected the separation of powers. So I think that, for me, is the big story, and both sides are avoiding that for obvious reasons, because they're spinning it, and, you know, that's what political parties do.
Since the decision, the opposition leader has made known his willingness to have a new GCOM chairperson appointed once he meets with the president. The Guyanese head of state has also made a commitment to ensuring that his government adheres to the CCJ ruling and work towards naming a chairperson soon. Samuel Suknandin for Globespan News. Meanwhile, the Private Sector Commission, PSC, is urging both President David Granger and opposition leader Barra Jagdeo to make every effort to appoint a new GCOM chairperson. The PSC's call comes days after the CCJ ruled that the government should respect the Constitution and call an election at the earliest possible time based on the successful passage of a no-confidence motion. The umbrella private sector body says its request was based on its view of the political and constitutional circumstances facing Guyana. The PSC said the matter should be treated with a high level of urgency. Open quote, within the spirit of the orders of the CCJ, the PSC therefore expects the President, GCOM, and all the political actors to act responsibly by adhering to the Constitution and the ruling of the CCJ, the PSC said in a statement, end quote. The international community has urged political players in Ghana to swiftly act in compliance with the country's constitution as ordered by the Caribbean Court of Justice. In giving his opinion on the recent CCJ decision regarding the consequential orders, opposition leader and General Secretary of the PPP, Barra Jagdeo, has made it clear that he will be looking to see how the regional and international communities respond to the situation. We find out more in this report.
Jagdeo told a press conference earlier today that he has already met with Secretary General of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, Erwin LaRocque, and requested that the judgment sent to all CARICOM heads of government.
So they don't get the spin from third parties. They're very capable people and they can read the judgment. And whether CARICOM now will move to uphold the decisions of a regional institution. That's the first thing. And the decisions are quite clear.
The former head of state says the issue has moved past the government, respecting the judgment of the court, as he feels that it will delay and try to frustrate the process going forward. However, Jagdeo firmly thinks that the international community will be the ones on trial. He questioned whether they will be ready to accept the judgment of Guyana's highest court.
Because if they're prepared to accept the unambiguous ruling from the CCJ that elections have to be held in accordance with the Constitution, which means 3 months, that the government is caretaker government, and that GCOM must comply with the Constitution, then that will determine how they relate to this government. They have to relate to this government in a caretaker capacity.
Jagdi also spoke to concerns raised about how Guyana's case at the International Court of Justice regarding Venezuela could be affected by the political issues facing the nation at this moment.
And that I am prepared to write a letter, if it's required, to the court, the ICJ, in support of our case, to say, notwithstanding the constitutional crisis that we have now, that we are prepared to support, that we fully support the government's position at the court.
Jagdi has ruled out his side supporting any extension of the life of the government through Parliament, stating that the window for his side to agree to extend their time has closed. The opposition leader wants elections to be held in September. Reporting for Globespan News, I am Kellon Rover.
And still on that same issue, diplomatic representatives for the ABC countries, that is America, Britain, and Canada, including the European Union, is urging the government to respect the ruling of the Caribbean Court of Justice. A joint statement issued today from these representative states says, and I quote, "The Caribbean Court of Justice, Guyana's Supreme Court, has spoken. It is important for the rule of law that all invoked actors abide by its ruling and the relevant provisions of the Constitution. We urge everyone to do so expeditiously." End quote. Following the CCJ's decision, last week, President David Granger accepted that his government is in caretaker mode and will remain as interim government until a new one is elected. Nevertheless, the president said that cabinet meetings will continue to take place in order to provide public services. The CCJ, in its ruling, has urged that a new GCOM chairman is appointed urgently to both the president and opposition, by both leaders. This is especially in light of its previous June 18 ruling, which validated the successful passage of the no confidence motion, which has now triggered new elections. Companies operating within the extractive industry which avoid public disclosure of their financial statements and the details of their payments to the government will now have difficulty doing so. This is based on the improved standards that will be implemented effective July 17 by the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, EITI, new standards for 2019. The EITI has for some time been pushing companies within the sector to disclose such information. However, there has been little compliance. Considering this, the EITI has now made it a requirement for Guyana and other member states to have companies operating within the jurisdiction publicly disclose their audited financial statements. The international body said that government entities should only be exempted from the process if it can be demonstrated by that its revenues are not material. EITI also stated that all extractive companies making material payments to the government would now be required to comprehensively disclose these payments in accordance with the agreed scope. In reiterating the government's commitment to ensuring that every Guyanese youth must achieve the best quality of education, President David Granger today commissioned the Tertiary Students' Dormitory for hinterland students. Kellon Rover was there and filed this report.
Addressing the gathering at Lillian Dahl, East Coast Demerara this morning, the head of state said that provisions are being made so that every child can accomplish a sung education, and the 3 A's which he listed as access, attendance, and attainment.
The plan of action has guided government's actions over the last 4 years. Actions aimed at empowering hinterland residents through education, employment, economic enterprises, energy, infrastructure, land rights, poverty reduction, public services, and cultural development. According to the plan, education is the surest and swiftest way to reduce inequality.
According to President Granger, since the coalition has assumed office in 2015, millions of dollars have been invested into the education sector. Speaking specifically about the improvement in the Hinterland district, the president disclosed that the number of hinterland scholarships have increased from 120 in 2014 to 186 in 2018. Hinterland students also have been among the beneficiaries of the 1,599 tertiary level scholarships offered by the Department of the Public Service since 2015.
Education is an entitlement, and it is my hope that after the revenues from oil production make their impact on the economy, education will continue to attract the highest expenditure from your government.
Meanwhile, the spanking new dormitory is expected to house students from the hinterland areas and will reduce their expenses significantly. Also attending the event were Minister of State Don Hastings, Education Minister Dr. Nicolette Henry, 4th Vice President and Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs Sidney Ollicock, Junior Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs Valerie Garrido, Minister with responsibility for Labor Keith Scott, and Social Cohesion Minister Dr. George Norton, among others. Reporting for Globespan News, I am Kellon Rover.
A vehicle collision on the Suzaik-Linden Highway, which occurred over the weekend, left one woman dead and two people critical. According to reports, around 2000 hours on Saturday, a black SUV bearing number plates PVV 535 collided with a taxi HC2554 at the Suzaik Junction. The SUV was heading west while the taxi was coming from east of the hillside. Witnesses stated that they saw the vehicles collide head-on. The woman, who was a passenger in the taxi, was declared dead on arrival at the Diamond Diagnostic Center, while the others were transported to the Georgetown Public Hospital for treatment. Let's now take a look at regional and international news. Regionally, the United States Coast Guard cutter Richard Dixon repatriated 14 Dominican migrants to a Dominican Navy patrol vessel Saturday near Dominican Republic following the interdiction of an illegal migrant voyage Thursday off the coast of Puerto Rico. Two other Dominican men traveling in the group remain in federal custody facing possible prosecution by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Puerto Rico on potential charges of attempted illegal re-entry into a U.S. territory. The interdiction is the result of ongoing efforts in support of Operation Unified Resolve, Operation Caribbean Guard, and the Caribbean Border Interagency Group. Since October 2018, the Coast Guard and CBIG, partner federal and state agency, have interdicted over 1,550 migrants at sea near Puerto Rico. Internationally, anti-terrorism police in northern Italy have seized an air-to-air missile and other sophisticated weapons during raids on far-right extremist groups. 3 people were arrested, 2 of them near Forlì Airport. Neo-Nazi propaganda was also seized in raids in several cities. Italian media say the raids were part of an investigation into Italian far-right help for Russian-backed separatist forces in eastern Ukraine. And now for a look at what's happening in sport. England beat New Zealand to win the Men's World Cup for the first time after one of the most amazing games of cricket ever played was tied twice. In an emotional and electric atmosphere at Lord's, both sides scored 241 in their 50 overs and were level on 15 when they batted for an extra over apiece. It meant England were crowned world champions by virtue of having scored more boundary, 4s and 6s, 26 to New Zealand's 17 in the entire match. That it even got to the stage was astonishing in itself, and came as a result of a barely believable conclusion at the home of cricket, the first tie a World Cup final has ever recorded, the BBC Sport reported. Several teams claimed massive wins when the ExxonMobil boys and girls under-14 football continued on Saturday at the Ministry of Education ground on Carifesta Avenue, Georgetown. The largest win in the Petra-organized tournament over the weekend was Dolphin Secondary 7-0, crushing Tutorial High. Doubles from Jude Charles, second and 22nd, and Jaquay Cole, along with a goal each from Tyrese John, Devon Chance and Ronaldo James secured the win for Dolphin. Cummins Lodge dropped Ansgrove 6-2 earlier in the day. North Ryville got past Queenstown 5-3. Spencer and Pleasance Orphanage's 4-1 win over St. John's saw every goal coming off the efforts of Pleasance. And that has brought us to the end of today's news. Before we go, here's a recap of our major headlines. 5 remanded over murder of money changer and daughter. Western diplomats urge government to abide by CCJ ruling. 63-year-old man gets 20 years jail sentence for raping child 4. General elections could be held this year, says political analysts. And the international community will be on trial regarding CCJ ruling. Jack Dio. Thank you for watching Globespan News. On behalf of myself, Samuel Suknandan, the news and technical team, until next time, do have a great day.